how's everyone doing? Woohoo! Yeah! Yeah! Alright, so today we're going to be talking about what is new in Rails 6. And so before I get into the talk, I would like to introduce myself. Apparently in the order of the slides, I'm first introducing my children. So I have Samuel, Garner, and Ruby, ages from 2 to 5. So they definitely keep us busy. And yes, I did name my youngest daughter Ruby, and my wife did approve of that. And it's actually a really cool thing, because I can do stuff like this on Twitter, where I can say, this is Ruby, Ruby is on Rails. So I have a lot of fun with it, and if you ever have kids, you should name one Ruby. As Rhea said, my name is David Kimura. This is what I look like on the internet. So if you happen to see this photo of me, that's not me yelling or anything, that's just how I look. You can find me on Twitter at Cobalts. I'm a panelist on Ruby Roads, which is a Ruby podcast. So we do weekly recordings and release and talk to other members in the community. I also do a screencast site, driftandruby.com, where I do a weekly publication of a tutorial video on Ruby. So if you've ever seen that logo or if you've ever been to the site, my voice may sound familiar. Up until about a couple of weeks ago, I was working for a company called Sage in the financial sector. However, they recently sold off our division. I was with them for about 9 years, but my tenure is now continuing with a HCM company, which is a human capital management called ISOL. But you guys want to hear about Rails 6 and some of the cool things that's coming up in Rails 6. So, as Al and Riaz mentioned, there was a release today on Rails, updating all the way back from 4.2, and it's addressing 3 security issues. So if you are using an older Rails application, definitely check out blog.rubyonrails.org and make sure that you're updating your application. And also, Ruby 2.6.2 was released today, so it's been a great day. I always like seeing new versions of Rails and Ruby come out. But we're going to talk about Rails. And so when you start a new Rails application, the very first thing that you'll notice, and this is not a blank slide, it is actually the new welcome picture whenever you create a new Ruby on Rails application. And they made it just a lot more inclusive for different demographics. So, if you haven't launched a browser, and if you are just in the code base, one of the first things that you will notice with a Rails application is that the app assets JavaScript folder is no longer there. It's been completely replaced by Webpacker, which it has its own inherent problems with using JavaScript libraries that are not updated for Yarn, so they don't have a manifest package. And then it also has some nuances if you have a gem that does not have a manifest, where you're not going to be able to just simply add in the JavaScript libraries for your gem anymore. There are some nuances that you have to go through. We're not going to go in depth into that today, but I do have an example application that I've been working on in Rails 6 Beta 3 now, which kind of explores some of the different possibilities of kind of getting back to that original functionality. Another thing with the Rails 6 beta is that you have to use Ruby 2.5 or later now. Any Ruby version less than 2.5 is no longer supported on Rails 6, so that is a hard requirement. A pretty cool feature that Riaz is excited about in Rails 6 is the multiple database support. The multiple database support did exist prior to Rails 6, but it was not a simple thing to do, and they just really streamlined it to be a lot more Railsy. So when you go into your database YAML file, it's going to look a little bit different if you are doing multiple database support. And the idea is that you will set up separate databases, so under your development namespace or under your test or your production, you can then drill it down even further with something like a primary and a replica. If you do that, then you now have two separate databases that you were able to work with. And the nice thing about that is sometimes an application can get so large where you're reading from and writing to the same table, and that's going to have some performance impacts. So instead, you can now do something like this where within your model, you can do a connects to database and then pass in a writing parameter and then a reading parameter pointing to each one of the different databases that you created in your database YAML file. And it's going to pretty much just kind of work with a few caveats. So in this example, I'm doing a user that connected to, and then I'm specifying reading from, specifying the adapter and database, and then within a block, I'm calling the user.first, and then that's returning the record. So that's really kind of ugly, especially if you have to do that all throughout your application. But they did, in a later version of beta, come out with an easier way, whereas more simple syntax to do something like that. And yeah, that's easy to read. So with a user connected to, you can now pass in a role, and then which role you're wanting to do. You can pass in your reading role or your writing role, and then it's automatically going to use that associated database. So in this example, I have a deviation in my primary database and my primary replica just for illustration purposes here, where you can see when I'm reading from the reading database, which is the primary replica, the user's first name returned is Dave. But then on line 4 here, if I do a user.first, that's going to read from the default database, and in this case, it's showing David. So you can see that we're calling the same command, but we are accessing two separate databases, so you can see the difference in the data returned. Rails is not going to handle the replication for you. That's actually something that you have to set up yourself. Whether you're using Postgres, MySQL, or even SQLite 3, they have their own mechanisms or libraries available, so you're able to do your replication. And ideally, if the replication works, regardless of which one of these commands you run, it technically should return the same information. The next feature is the Action Mailbox. Action Mailbox is a really cool feature where you're able to send an email to your Rails application. Your Rails application will be able to then take that in, and then you're going to be able to do whatever kind of parsing or business logic with that email. So the way that works is you simply just create an email, and you have to have some kind of ingress. So if you're using Mailgun to receive any incoming emails, and there's other services as well that support that with Amazon or whatever you prefer. And their documentation is actually pretty good about what they are supporting out of the box by default. So once the Mailgun receives the email, it'll make an API call to your Rails application. With that API call, it's then going to go through all the proper wrappings, and then within your Rails application, you can actually see the email. And so the example application that I created that's actually consuming this part, and then this next screen, the idea is you don't want to share out your email address to a group of people, but you need to be able to contact that group of people. If they want to share their email with you personally, that's something separate, but by default, we don't want to leak user information. So all they have to do is send an email address to this website or to a specialized email address, and then it's going to then take in that email, it's going to then blast it out to all of the people in your group. So that way, you are taking in the email to one unified email address that's a common knowledge, and then you are privately sending it out to all the members in your group. So that is just one use case that I found for the new Action Mailbox. And again, this functionality existed before Rails 6, but it was not easy to set up, and usually the code base got a lot more ugly as you got further into it. But with the Action Mailbox, it really is as simple as having a routing file. So it's under the app mailboxes, application mailbox. And within there, you have a routing. You can use regex, and then you point it to a group. Or in this case, my mailbox is called group. And they have other kind of handles or symbols that you're able to use to be a catch-all or stuff like that, where maybe it doesn't follow or fall into one of your different matches.
I love the hash rocket.
What's that?
The hash rocket's awesome.
I know, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I don't know if this is going to be very readable, but essentially, I'll kind of explain what's happening here. This is my group mailbox class inheriting from the application mailbox. And so with this, you're given different kind of callbacks on your mailbox. So once an email comes in, it goes into the routing file, and that routing file will send it to the appropriate mailbox. And within this mailbox, before you even touch the email, you can have different kinds of processing rules. So if you have a before processing, ensure a sender is a user, then you're basically making sure that that user exists within your user's table before you do anything else. Otherwise, it's going to reject the email. And then the main entry point into the mailbox is the process. So with the process, you're able to then work with the email. So on line 7, you can see where we are creating a new instance of an email audit. And this email audit is where I want to store certain information about this email, who it came from, the user it's associated with, the subject, and then I'm actually using active storage here to take that email that I received and attach it to this new record. And the idea behind that is we want to keep a log for a certain amount of time beyond what the action mailbox is going to do. By default, all emails will be incinerated within 30 days. If you need to keep it for longer than that, and if you need to keep the original information, then you can easily use something like active storage to do that. We then save the email record that came in, and then I'm calling the group mailbox services last, which is just a service object that I created that is going to take that ID of the record, and then it's going to send it out in a separate email to each one of the users that are in a particular group. If for whatever reason there is an error, you should never erase or rescue from exception like this, but this is just a cut-or example where we're going to bounce with, and that's going to, on any situation where there is an error, send an email back to the original sender. And one thing, it's pretty hard to see in the active storage, when we have our attachment that we are trying to create, we are creating a string IO new, and then we're passing in this content. And this content is a private method down here where we're simply checking to see if the email is multi-part. And if it is, then we're getting the HTML part body, and we're decoding it. Otherwise, we're getting the body and decoding it. Another new feature is action text. And action text is basically just a what you see is what you get, or a WYSIWYG editor. So the idea with action text is that sending this up manually in an application.
I'm sorry. What if the multi-part came from old Outlook and it's text in RTF?
I don't know. I'm sure they thought of that.
Okay.
Try it out.
Yeah. Sorry.
But the underlying technology in email parsing is the MailGem, which Rails is using, and that's been the kind of standard de facto way. So however the MailGem is handling it, that's how Action Mailbox would handle it as well. So with the what you see is what you get editor, this is just an example of it where you get some different styling that you can do with bold, italics, links, upload images, and stuff like that. And the nice thing about this being included into the Rails core is that they do so much of the hard work for you with sanitizing the emails, or sorry, sanitizing the rich text, to avoid stuff like cross-site scripting and different things like that. So in other, what you see in other WYSIWYG editors, that's not been the case. Even SummerNote and some other ones have the vulnerability where you could inspect elements and then paste in some standard JavaScript, and by doing that, you're then exposing your app to cross-site scripting. So we've battle tested this at the last meetup, or the meetup where I talked about action text, and it's definitely done a pretty good job. But because I did do that in a previous meetup talk, I'll just kind of run through the code really quick, where you were in a new Rails application, you would just do a Rails action text install, and by doing that install, it's going to install the action text into Webpacker, so that would be an initial requirement that you would have to have. And then you have to also have some kind of image processor if you are accepting the image uploads. And if you are doing this in a Rails 5.2 application, I did create a separate branch off of the original gen because this has been merged into the Rails master, but I did keep an archive of it so that you were able to still use it in a older Rails application. But really, all you have to do is in your model, you have to specify as rich text and then pass in some parameter. And that's really all you have to do on the model side. So it's very simple from that standpoint. And we do not, with this article model, we do not actually have a column called content on our database, but instead, we just have this as rich text, and then we're passing in content. In your controller, you just have to allow that content as a whitelisted parameter. And then in your view, you just have to change whatever your input is for content to a as rich or to a rich text area. So once you do all of that, then you basically get your WYSIWYG editor, and you don't have to really worry about much else. Another nice thing with Rails, well, I don't even know if this is a nice thing, but something to be aware of, is that they now have blocked hosts. So if you create a new Rails 6 application, you go to Rails S, and if you're using something like Ingrok or Humadev or something like that, where you're not accessing your local host specifically in the URL, then it's going to give you this error, and it's telling you to go into your configuration to add in the appropriate domain that you want to be allowed. So ideally, this is going to, at the code level, prevent someone from having your application hosted or pointing their own domain to your application. And then below there is just in the environments, development.rb, where I've added in the .dev domain, which apparently now we shouldn't use because that's a legitimate GTLD. GTLD. Is that right? One of those weird acronyms. Right? And then, so you don't want to use .dev anymore. .test is still a good one to use. Or if you need to have multiple, you're able to send multiple into there. Rails 6 made a lot of changes around the tests. So in Rails 5, I think it was Rails 5.2 or something, they added system tests, which is a UI testing using Capybara Selenium. But they've also added in the ability to test Action Cable now. So Action Cable, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a WebSocket solution that Rails came up with for having WebSockets and a more, quote, real-time communication with your application and its end users. Up until now, there was no way to efficiently test WebSockets using Action Cable. So now they have an assert broadcast. You can make a broadcast and then check the assert broadcast on a certain channel has changed. You can also subscribe. So there's a subscribe method now. And with that subscribe, you can pass in your channel information. You can assert that the subscription is confirmed. And then you can also check and assert that there is a string or it has string. Another nice thing that's already existed outside of Rails is parallel testing. And the idea behind that is however many CPU cores or threads you have, you can split your test suite out into multiple cores. So depending on your computer, you can have 4 or 8 tests running simultaneously. It'll break up the application into separate sections. So typically it's going to, after a few tests run, it's going to try to load it so they all happen and finish around the same time. But the idea of having 4 cores running all your tests, it's essentially, ideally, it's going to be about 4 times faster. In some of my tests that I've run with parallel tests, it has set up the test suite from like 2 hours down to 30 minutes. So it can definitely make a pretty big difference on your application. And there's some nice little active record things that they've added in. So if you've ever had to get a list of users, or if you just need to get one user, you want to plug their name and then get the first record, or if you needed to find a user by their ID, limit 1, plug, getting just their name and email, and then the first record, you now have this pick method. And so you can just do user.pick as in the name, and that's going to be the exact same thing as a user limit 1 plug name.first. So a lot easier to write, and the nice thing is that it is chainable. So you're able to chain it in with your other scoping records. You also now have the ability to change your databases. I'm not too sure why this made it into Rails 4, because if you're that early on in the application development, then you can just easily change it, but they found that apparently this happens more often than not, and having a way to change your database from something like Postgres to MySQL or to SQLite or whatever, then you're able to do that simply with a Rails DB system change, -2, and it equals, and then whatever database you are wanting. And that's really just going to update your gem file and then your database YAML file. It's not going to create the database, run migrations, or anything like that. That's all up to you to do. But it just saves you 2 steps.
Sometimes there's stuff in like your schema, like RB or whatever what is that specific to the database? Does it change that stuff or does it change that?
I would imagine not. No, I don't think it's that fancy. So again, I'm David Kimura. That's what I look like on the internet. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm @Cobalts. And if you like this talk, or you want to see a lot more talks that I do on my weekly podcast, you can check out thedrivenruby.com. Finish. Is there any questions or anything you guys would like to kind of see in my demo of? Is that, yeah, let's stop there.
Directly related, you have to, or you want to, move from Rails 5 to Rails 6, you know how common it is or not. Because between some versions of Rails, it's actually pretty easy to move, and between some that is very hard. So how much you can break Rails 5? Repeat the question.
Yeah, so upgrading from Rails 5, it really depends on what version. If you're on Rails 5.0, it's going to be more complicated than if you're on Rails 5.2. Rails 5.2 already introduced stuff like active storage. So if you are wanting to use all the new bells and whistles of Rails 6, you're coming from a Rails 5.2, and you've already spent the effort of changing your upload mechanism to active storage, then it's going to be a lot easier to do. But coming from a Rails 5.0 application, the actual upgrade of Rails, so if I started a new Rails 5.0 application and I wanted to upgrade to Rails 6, it actually wouldn't be that hard. The main things that have changed would be the configuration files. And so my process for usually updating to a new larger Rails version number or major number is to create a new Rails 6 application, create a new Rails whatever version I'm currently on, and do a diff of the two. And a diff of the configuration files to see what's missing. And there's actually a website, I think it's called railsdiff.com or something like that, that actually does that for you. It shows you the differences between two different versions. And so today, that's probably what I'll use. But your biggest issue with upgrading from Rails 5 to Rails 6 is going to be your dependencies. All the different gens that you've had that are probably not supported anymore, that kind of stuff. So if I were to do the upgrade from 5 to 6, the first thing I would do is make sure that I have good code coverage. Because without good code coverage, I don't have the confidence in upgrading the Rails application. And then I would make sure that any dependencies, I think you can, I forget the name, there's a bundle command that you can run to see which one of your dependencies are outdated, which one of your gens are outdated. And then you're basically going to be upgrading one at a time, running your tests in between to see if it broke anything. And that's going to be the most time consuming, and it becomes even more time consuming when one of those gens is giving you a dependency conflict because it's not supporting the new Rails version. Any other questions? Frank? You always have one. Oh, yes. I am not quite sure. I don't know if it actually has any function within there, but it was something that I saw. But I know it does not actually trigger any kind of replica from one database to another.
That would be really weird to implement that way.
It would be. I don't know if I would want my Rails application to handle that kind of function.
What's the status of Stroke with Rails 6? Stroke. Sprocket.
Oh. I'm not sure. Yes, what's the status of sprockets in Rails 6? With the asset pipeline diverging over to Webpacker, it's really kind of weird the way they are handling it. So you basically have sprockets is eventually going away, I believe, in favor of Webpacker, but you still have the style sheets within the assets. And you can still put fonts in there and stuff, but they migrated all the JavaScript off to the tags.
Can you show us what the default JavaScript pack and application looks like?
Yeah. Give me a second here. Let's go over this one. That's right there. I don't have my key bindings on here yet.
Why would you switch to Visual C ahead?
What's that?
Yeah.
Control it. Pulling your chain.
Alright, so add JavaScript. So this is an application that I've been working on, and it's using Stimulus. It's a very simple Rails application. And so one of the things is jQuery is a requirement within this application. So before, you would have your Rails application with your app assets, JavaScript, and then you would have the // requires equal, or equals require, and then jQuery. Well, you don't have that really anymore. So you can import in jQuery. So you can require jQuery, but then within the application, you don't actually have access to it. So you can do one little hackery, do a window dot, $ equals the window dot jQuery equals the required jQuery, and then all throughout the application you can use jQuery. So it's one of those really annoying things like unless if you knew to actually do something like that as a workaround, then you're going to install jQuery thinking that everything is working in fine, and then it's not.
Can you not use the Webpack rig to make that available?
You can, but my main issue with that is, and you don't have that transparency. You don't have any of that in the actual Rails documentation. They just say, oh, you need Webpacker, here's how you install it, and look how easy it is to just do a yarn add, whatever. They don't actually go into, like, if you need this package or library to be globally accessible within your application, then you need to properly configure it like this. But yes,
What is the requiring active storage? Is it JavaScript library?
yeah, so the active storage JavaScript library is going to handle things like shoot, I forget what they call it, the uploading the progress bars and that stuff.
I have a question. Were you at the app JavaScript, or you have the style that is CSS, like as a tag itself?
Yes.
Is that like, are you importing the styles of CSS in the app.js, or are you building a native CSS app with directly from there?
So within my layout, I'm doing a style sheets pack tag and then pulling in these style sheets.
So your style sheet pack tag is a style sheet pack tag styles?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay. So one funny thing is, normally this is called application.js, but there is in my app assets style sheets and application.scss. For whatever reason, those two conflicted. So the style sheets name and the style sheets folder conflicted with the JavaScript pack tags application.js. So I had to change the name of that in order to get my JavaScript actually working. I don't know if they recently fixed that, but as far as beta 1, that was still a problem, and it was really annoying. So we'll do that. Where's the page? Yes, to your point, if you want to configure jQuery to be globally accessible under your config and Webpack environment, you're able to set up your environment to include the $ pointing to the jQuery library, and you would have to kind of follow that down if you want jQuery with a capital U or jQuery with a lowercase u to be the global function for that package. Is there any other questions? No? Great, thank you.
Would you?
Yeah, right.
So it's still beta. You're a betting man. When is this going gold master?
When's Rails come?
Right
There's
soon.
a schedule.
Yeah, end of April is when I imagine it will go live. So, if you are needing to start out a new Rails application just because it's beta, I would still recommend going with the new Rails 6. Because, I mean, realistically, we are a month and a half away from Rails 6 major release. So it makes sense. You're not going to be able to get your application up running in a month and a half unless you have a large team or it's a simple application. But I've actually been using it since beta 1, and I've run into very few issues other than the Webpacker.
So let's say the other important thing. If you are on Rails 4.2 or older, this should be a wake-up call about upgrading. Because what happens?
Upgrading to a new Rails version?
Yes,
With your gem files?
yes.
Everything breaks.
Well,
Nothing
yeah.
works.
And more importantly, the 4.2 will stop receiving updates.
Even secure.
Yeah, I thought 4.2 was already
Almost.
done with, but
No.
not yet.
So latest one is
It's on the security. Yeah, it's on. There's a policy.
323 as well for anybody that's on that.
Yeah.
Question regarding what exactly wrong with the beta? Are there no big issues, or they just keep testing and it's not a big deal as beta?
Sorry.
Regarding its beta status, how far is technically well solved? Is there something clearly that doesn't work, or is it minor?
No, it goes through a period of beta, and once it goes through beta, it'll then go to a release candidate status, and really it's saying, hey, we have the major version out here, start using it, start playing with it, start trying to break it, report bugs, but I believe that it's feature complete right now. They're just wanting to make sure it's stable before it's released out to the masses.
I heard this interview, like this beta build master grid is really more for gem maintainers to go ahead and get their stuff up to date so that